initial verse. The consciousness of desire, which is unable to resolve the serious problems of the five dusts. So the five dusts will be the what we see with eye, which would be the object, smell, sound, taste, and touch. When conditions are favorable, people give rise to greed and cravings. So in other words, we see something we like, and what we see, whether it's the object, the taste of the food, the sound that we like. So that arouses desire, and that will give rise to cravings and greed. The consciousness of rage, unable to resolve serious problems of the five dusts. So same thing with the five dusts. We see someone we don't mind, or someone we hate. So they give rise to unfavorable conditions, therefore hatred and anger. The third type of distorted consciousness was the consciousness of harm. So we constantly perceive and ponder that others are enemies or thieves, and this is purely due to our ignorance of the delusion. And so as a result, and we harbor this ignorance, doubt, and arrogance, right? So because we already have this perceived perception that those conditions that we see not to, or rather our enemies or thieves. So they want to take things away from us, so we want to harm them. So three types of distorted consciousness: consciousness of desire, giving rise to greed; consciousness of rage, giving rise to anger; consciousness of harm, giving to delusion, doubt, and arrogance. So greed, anger, delusion, doubt, and arrogance. So which is altogether five of them, arising from three types of distorted consciousness. So in Master explanation, consciousness is the thought that's generated when we connect with external conditions, right? So we just, from the initial words, is you have that consciousness, we connect with external conditions, therefore we generate that feeling of greed, anger, delusion, arrogance, and doubt. Now, so let's go back to the understanding of the consciousness. And when we are born, going back to the Master explain about the 12 links of cyclic existence, or the 12 chains of cyclic existence. So you remember the part that the moment we are born, right? First of all, we start off with ignorance, then the karma, right? That resulting in this birth in this lifetime. Forming, then we got a body on the form, and then got six sensory formation of the six sensory organs, including the mind. Now that then in contact with the external condition, giving rise to feeling, and that's exactly that part of the 12 links of cyclic existence that Master is relating to. Now that is what we call the mundane consciousness, or the worldly consciousness. That's what we live in this world. So therefore, we then go back and understand the formation, go back 2 chains before that, that is formation of the mind. So when the mind is formed, and I shared with you a couple of days ago, the mind that we have, this human mind that we have, which is called the mind stream. So this mind stream in this human life that we have is devolved from our, if you like, our karmic storehouse, right? And then deposited in the 7th consciousness, which is our habitual tendencies, and down to the formation of this core mind stream that we have. So this mind stream that we have is only for this life, and it will die the moment we die. But what you continue to evolve upon death is only the 8th consciousness, and that will go on to the next life, and then a new mind stream, so to speak, will be formed. So therefore, we have only this window, which is this mind stream window we have in this life. So therefore, in the Dharma, we need to understand and elevate above that. We need to rise above these worldly winds, right? So we live in this life that we have, and these worldly winds, which are external conditions that we have, will be blowing at us all the time, especially so we are householders. So this household, as householders, we have, well, we are midst of these winds, but if we can then elevate above our consciousness of our mind stream, then we can rise above the winds. So when that happens is that when the six roots, which are the six sensory consciousness, encounter with the six dots, the form, the sound, taste, touch objects, then in our external conditions, so that their desires arise. So that feeling would arise. The feeling is either the feeling is favorable, then which is favorable, I want that. So that's good. But it's unfavorable, then we get angry. When it makes no sense, then we cause harm, we inflict harm because we just push them away and we can inflict damage as a result. And that's how one master is trying to say today's teaching is from the three afflicted consciousness of three distorted consciousness. So that's why sometimes, within the families over small trivial issues, and that can divide the family, and how family break apart. It's just not only family, it could be also friends, it could be colleagues for that matter. And I think for us, you've got to be very mindful about this, because we are householders. We will face all this thing all the time and face that every day. At home, we face our family. At work, we face our colleagues. Okay, outside family, outside work, we face our friends. So three areas that we will inevitably encounter. So the consciousness of desire is greed, rage is anger, and harm is ignorance. And and this is how our afflictions arise. So this distorted consciousness. I extracted this because I thought it was this was Jekyll's very violent to a female fox. So on the surface appear very pretty. So, and the minds are thoughts are very wily, and they always want to take advantage of I'm sure so I'm sure some of you, so guys, I'm sure you may come across situation like this. Somehow, when you're young, you don't encounter them. You only encounter them when you're older, for good reasons. So different thoughts of greed are like vicious beasts. So they engage in spiritual practice. Sometimes spiritual practitioners who have eliminated their affliction like to show off or like to boast their experience in spiritual cultivation. And these are different thoughts of greed. So even when in a spiritual practice, there are situations that you'll find that they would like to demonstrate how much they know. And and the reason, I mean, it is the same thing with the basic affliction of the consciousness of greed, of desire. And so, and that's basically is grasping and attachment to what one's wants. So the desire doesn't necessarily mean that it's in unworldly matters. It can also aspire to spiritual matters. So even for someone, all the spiritual attainment, that's why sometimes the spiritual progress can stop or get stuck or hindered at certain level because you haven't got rid of that desire and that grasping. So we hold on to that particular state of development because we think that we have attained higher than anybody else. And that is the trapping. So these are all worldly trappings. That's mainly because we still have that worldly consciousness or the mundane consciousness with us. Well, we haven't grown in our consciousness. So when one hasn't grown above the worldly consciousness, and we cannot rise above the worldly winds, and that's the reason why some will get stuck to that attachment or that grasping. So in the desire realm, which is where we are in, the desire realm, where because we take out on this human life, we are in the desire realm. There is also the four inverted views, of which you are familiar with, and the eight sufferings. And obviously, eight suffering was really from the birth, aging, sickness, and death, right? And then the God of five aggregates. I can count people you don't like, and so then people that you like are not getting what you want. So all these are eight sufferings as a result of what we are in this life form, this mind stream that we have. So therefore, in our practice is to actually grow above that consciousness so that we can understand. So we're still subject to these bodily sensations. That's because we have a body. And we will have this bodily sensation. We cannot get rid of the bodily sensation. Okay. So the question is, how do we deal with that? And obviously, without the understanding of what I want, I'm not really growing above my self views. That's why there are extreme views, deviant views, stubborn views, and views of divine precept. And all this today's Master's teaching is to rise above this mundane consciousness that we have. So the lessons learned is thinking in the form realm leads to four inverted views and its suffering. And if they then thinking in the form realm, and just look at this word, thinking in the form realm. Now, the thing is, if we understand or realize that form is a skandha, and you understand that skandha in essence is emptiness, we are actually attaching to nothing. We're only attaching to emptiness. So that's what the realization that we need to grow towards. So these four kinds of distortions are a result of our minds being covered by various kinds of afflictions and ignorance. Now, this the four kinds of distortion that Master mentioned, and all because then we are still very stuck in the mud of samsara, and so we continue to wallow in it. And knowing the Dharma is one thing. We need to grow to understand the Dharma. Understanding the Dharma is one thing. We need to rise above, because understanding is still in the mind consciousness. It's still in the mind stream consciousness. We need to go up higher level to go to the state of realization. It's only from realization we apply to our daily life, we can only rise above the winds. So once spiritual practitioners go astray and deviate in their thinking, they also can also become confused. So this is a caution that Master has given us today. So the greater self is ever abiding the truth. When it's abiding the truth, what it is, and I extracted this from the transcript. Where there is self, they see no self. Right? Where there is self, which is the inverted view, you see no self. This phenomena is without the self. And that is one of the fourfold mindfulness, which is in fact the last of the fourfold mindfulness. Where there is permanence, they see impermanence. Where there is permanent, that's the mundane consciousness. They see impermanence. And what is impermanent? A mind is impermanent. And that impermanent is the third of the fourfold mindfulness. Where there is purity, where we see as purity, when you have the consciousness of mindfulness, they see impurity. What is impurity? The body is impure, and that is the first of the fourfold mindfulness. Where there is joy, that what we see joy with worldly happiness, you see suffering, because what is I understand what is worldly happiness. Worldly happiness is a moment beneath true worldly unhappiness. So they see that as suffering. That happiness will eventually, the worldly happiness will eventually lead to suffering. So that feeling is suffering, and that is the second of the fourfold mindfulness. So how this four inverted view is converted into fourfold mindfulness, and that's the antidote to the four inverted views. So on this contemplation today about how we, especially for us as a householder when we practice, and how we need to rise above those distorted consciousness. A householder in practice has a spiritual concentration of practice of inside out and outside in. Inside out is the consciousness of awareness. You need to be aware of what's inside you, so that when we contact with the external conditions, you know how to respond. And that can only come about when you attain what you call inner developments. The inner development is the inner light within you. The spiritual practice is not to have the light outside, it's the light inside. So if we walk the bodhisattva path and we want to guide others, how can we guide others when the light inside us is not littered? And then outside in is our conduct. So this is about the consciousness of mindfulness. So our conduct, because we interact with people, so it's starting from outside, how we interact with people, and we look at the condition that we have. So once we be aware of inside and mindful, our display to the outside. So a householder who is well in practice is like a nimble to be able to rise above the worldly winds. When one is heavy, how can you rise above the worldly winds? How can one be like a nimble, let go? It's like a balloon. If you don't let go, if the weight is being carried all the time, we will be blown by the worldly winds of the mundane consciousness. So in the matters that see, you observe and you rise above. In the matters that see are the five skandhas: form, feeling, perception, memory, formation, and consciousness. So you observe that in quietude, and you observe that in samadhi, and you rise above that. So when we elevate the consciousness, you are prepared for the unprepared. So learn to unlearn the worldly ways, and that's why we can rise above. So such is the swift practice that rises above the winds. So on relationship, an undeveloped mind is controlled by one's own desire, emotion. So because why I always mention about desire, emotion, because desire resides in our heart, emotion resides in the mind. So when it's undeveloped, when we don't have, and it's all controlled by the word consciousness. And what happens is that the worldly winds will round up the desire, emotion, and the mind will be control of you. And the mind stream that we have, like I say, this mind stream we have is only this life. You control this life of yours, and we will live this life without ever realizing or waking up, or having any moment of awakening. And this whole life would then be wasted. So a developed mind is forgiving, and as reason and consciousness above others. And forgiving is very important, because without forgiving, you cannot love. Without forgiving, you cannot be in harmonious. And that is the reason why the virtue of forgiving is actually without being forgiving, you cannot be merciful. Without merciful, you cannot be compassionate. And therefore, we have to get through that hindrance in us. All right, Gan En, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, Gan En so much, Brother Chin, for the wonderful sharing, great insight